You're listening to the LDS Sexologist, a podcast devoted to tackling the taboo and finding the connection between spirituality and sexuality. To submit your anonymous questions, click the link in my Instagram bio. Hello everyone and welcome back to the LDS Sexologist. We have another Q&A episode today, and you guys have been doing really well submitting those questions. So I'm going to try not necessarily to go in order because there are some similar questions. The ones that I feel like are most pertinent or I'm getting a lot of, I'm going to try and address first. So I'm going to get to them, I promise. It will take a little bit of patience because they are coming in. And I have a lot backlogged as well. But let's start off with a question from my comments, actually, because I commented back and said that I would answer it, and I got a lot referring to the same thing. So in my comments, it was asked that if it's not supposed to hurt the first time, how do you avoid that? Great question. And some similar ones also are like, techniques for vaginismus, which is officially known as GPPPD. And I had a couple others about pain specifically and starting off and, how can I avoid having pain, or I've never heard that it's not supposed to hurt before. So let's address the pain issue. I usually do a quiz when I'm speaking to any sort of group just to really make it fun and get us started. And one of the questions, so fair warning, if you ever have me come and speak, one of my questions that I ask is pain normal, even if it's the first time? And I ask that kind of as a trick question because it allows me to ease into this topic really easily, because a lot of women will put yes. And that's when I can say, no, we do not want to be normalizing pain. We have done that for far too long as women, where we normalize, severe pelvic pain, period pain, pain during penetration, and it has not served us well. Because our bodies are made to do this. So we don't want to be thinking that there's something wrong with us and that we should just push through, but rather we should be questioning the technique and be thinking, well, if it's supposed to be pain-free, then maybe there's some technique here that I don't have quite right and that I can make some adjustments for and then have pain-free. Because let me tell you, the clients that I've worked with where they are engaged, getting married, and we focus specifically on this, we help them get to a place where not only they're excited and feeling really relaxed and not anxious about sexual intimacy, but we want to make sure that it is going to be entirely pain-free and that both partners have a little bit of base to go off of as far as technique goes and some things to try. And I can tell you with 100% assurity that it is 100% possible to have a pain-free honeymoon. And a lot of the time, the clients that I'm working with prior to honeymoon, prior to that first time, they are having pain when they insert a tampon or when they had their IUD insertion. It was really bad. So I am not just talking about, oh, well, they were not going to have pain anyways. No. The people that I'm working with, they have pain with any type of penetration, not just sexual. So the basics of where to start, well, let's take it from an engaged standpoint where you're getting ready for the first time. There are some stretches that I would recommend. I mean, it's going to sound very clinical, this first part, and it is, honestly. Using some dilators and opening up your hips. We also want to make sure that we are getting in tune with our lower pelvic floor muscles, because that is what is in charge of opening and closing the vaginal canal. That's what's either going to let something in and to grab it and pull it towards you to accept that pleasure, or it's going to close and it's going to say, no, I'm here to protect you. And that is connected to your nervous system. You have two different parts of your nervous system. You have your sympathetic nervous system, and you can think of that as your body's gas pedal. So this is going to kick in during excitement, stress, or danger. This is your fight, flight, or freeze mode. Okay, this is when your heart rate goes up, it affects your breathing, your blood moves away from your core into your muscles. So your body's preparing to do something when this part of your nervous system is active. Whereas your parasympathetic nervous system is your brakes. So this one is your relaxation mode. And this is responsible for your rest, digestion, and sexual arousal. So when your body is feeling safe and calm, then it is able to increase that blood flow to your genitals. Your lubrication starts. That's when your erection happens in the bulbs of your clitoris. So what we want to make sure that we're understanding how these two parts work. And there's some real practical things that we can do to practice ahead of time of getting in tune with these parts of our nervous system and connecting them to our lower pelvic floor muscles and doing exercises to consciously tighten your lower pelvic floor and then to relax it. Now, most women that have GPPPD, or previously known as vaginismus, it's an unintentional tightening of the lower pelvic floor muscles. So basically, you can think of it as them being really, really, really tight, just super tight. So a lot of times the advice that's given is like, make sure you do your Kegels to have a really good, pelvic floor. Well, for these women, that is going to be the opposite of what they want to do, because it's basically like their body is constantly in a Kegel. They are constantly tightening those muscles, and it has become this unconscious thing and something that they don't realize their body is doing. And this can happen at a very young age when you intake information regarding your sexuality. So when all of a sudden you are sexualized, or you feel guilty, or you feel bad that you had a sexual thought because you associate that with sinning, and you just really have this contrary belief that your sexuality is somehow an enemy to your spirituality, then anytime your sexuality presents itself very normally through adolescence, you're going to like someone and you're going to have some unruly thoughts and some sexual preferences, and when those things arise, which they will, because a good, healthy development needs that to happen, and you need to be able to, take those in stride and learn how to handle them and learn, how to control impulse, but also not to overwhelm your whole entire system with them. Like, we need to get to a place where we can feel comfortable with this part of ourselves because it's developing with us. But when you stunt that, when you label it as bad or especially as wrong, then your body is actually going to have a reaction to that, not just in your mind. So what's going to happen is your lower pelvic floor muscles are going to tighten, and they're going to really squeeze your vaginal canal closed, because you have now trained your nervous system to fear sexuality, to fear anything dealing with arousal, anything dealing with eroticism. Your body is having a real reaction to that. And it has gone into this fight, flight, or freeze mode. It is taking this in, these thoughts or these moments, as dangerous, and it's going to protect yourself. And one of the ways that it does that is it closes the vaginal canal, so that way nothing can come up, nothing can get in. And it does that as a protection against you, which is also why when we talk about sexual trauma, why it is so much more traumatic than just any other type of crime. If someone were to steal something out of your hands, your phone or something, that's going to be very alarming and have distress that comes with it. But there is so much more tied to our genitals. It's directly linked to our nervous system and to our hormones and our muscles, our nerves. It's all connected, and that's why those types of trauma that you can have, they can really impact a person. And a lot of times, people who present with GPPPD do have a history of sexual trauma. It's not a criteria by any means. It doesn't mean that you have had some sort of trauma, but it is often found in victims of any sort of sexual abuse. And then it's also very prevalent in religious communities because of the purity culture that unfortunately how it's taught is quite negative, instead of coming from this empowering place of learning to be agents and to be choosers and to have sexual integrity and sexual integration. We tend to label things, we only link modesty to bodies, and specifically women's bodies, and which is why whenever I teach modesty, I always do it through a framework of teaching it to young boys or like adolescent boys and men, to just completely take away that link, because that's not what modesty is about. That's not the actual value. But we don't tend to teach the values. We teach the culture of, we teach behavior rather than teaching the value and then allowing others to be true agents and allow those values to dictate their behavior. Instead, we like to control the behavior, and so we label things as good or as bad, and these blanket statements and these very hard set rules, and that does a lot of damage, unfortunately. Because when you label sexuality as a whole as being bad, as being wrong, and it's hard to have nuance when you're making strict labels, right? So it's like, everything in this category is wrong and is bad. Well, that's just fundamentally untrue, and that is where you start to get these bodily reactions, where when you tell someone who's young, or even, it doesn't have to be verbalized, it could just be felt as a large culture. It's not so much what's said, but it's the lack of what's being said. The silence is so loud around this topic. The fear and anxiety of the adults are just so apparent. And so then, a young adolescent is going to take that in, and they're going to see, oh, this is something bad. This is something wrong. This is something that is hidden, that has shame around it, guilt associated. And in an attempt to protect themselves, their body is going to have a physical reaction to that. So we see this happen with the lower pelvic floor muscles. And it becomes so routine that the body is just in this state of being nice and tense and tight and protecting you because you've made it super hyper vigilant. But unfortunately, it's not as simple and easy as, girl, just relax. Like, take it in. No, because you have done a really, really good job for sometimes decades of your life training this part of your nervous system to respond a certain way. So what we can do is, it's a multifaceted approach. It depends on how severe it is, which is why I do always recommend, just if you have never put in a tampon prior to marriage, start there. Start with tampon insertion. And if that is painful, if that is genuinely a rough experience for you, then we need to take a few steps back actually before we can really go into it. But if you're someone that you've been inserting tampons since you were 12 years old, and in fact you have a Diva cup and that feels great to you, well then we're going to be starting on a completely different plane, and we're just going to be starting with some stretches to open up those hips. We're going to be focusing on some breathing exercises, making it so you are able to drop your stomach and feel that, because another thing that we do as women is we love to suck in, because heaven forbid our pouch sticks out, our lovely, beautiful pouch that is responsible for making human life, absolutely not. She will not be shown. We are very ashamed of her. And because of that, we find ourselves, even again, unconsciously sucking in and constantly tucking that part of ourselves in. And so you'll actually tighten those muscles just constantly. And a lot of women don't know how to really drop their stomach and let it hang, baby. Let it go loose, because we want to be able to really have it go all the way down and then control a full tightening of those muscles. So there's lots of different exercises that I have and resources that I help women with to learn how to do this. open up those hips, relax the inner thighs, the lower back muscles. They're all connected. And I work a lot with pelvic floor therapists, and I'm soon going to be having pelvic floor therapists on the podcast, so they'll be able to speak to this way better and in more depth, and they probably have a lot more resources as well, so I'll make sure that we discuss this particular question of, what can we do to help lessen the pain? We want to eliminate it. That is always the goal. The goal is no pain. That is always what we're going for, and we can expect, okay? That should always be our expectation, is that this is possible, because if not, then we're really setting ourselves up for some not so great experiences. And now with the research that's being done on endometriosis and PMOS, which was previously PCOS, we are understanding a lot better women's issues and the women's pain that, again, has been normalized for so long. And now we're saying, wait a second, this isn't normal. And there are things that you can do. So that's going to be a starting place. Dilators are a really good one. Now, here's just a note on dilators. A lot of times when you get a dilator kit, they usually have like 3 in the kit, is the cheaper ones especially. Now, what I will say about those is if I'm working with someone that genuinely has pain inserting the smallest tampon, a 3 dilator kit is not going to work for them. That is not going to be helpful because those jump in size way too quickly, and also the starting size is way too big. So I have some recommendations. They are linked in my link tree where it's under a category pain during sex. I have a 5-set dilator kit that I really recommend, and it has little holes at the bottom, like a finger loop, so it makes it easier for insertion. With any sort of dilators, you are going to need lubrication. You're also going to need to do those stretches beforehand. Instead of go just straight for it, we need to be using those and not just sticking them straight in. That's not the goal. Instead, we want to be pushing it in slightly, and then we're going to be pushing side to side, up and down in circles, making sure that our breathing is correct, that we are relaxing those lower pelvic floor muscles. Discomfort is okay, pain is not. And pelvic floor therapists, again, are going to be the number one recommended for severe pain or even just moderate. If you have light or you're concerned about it and you just want to ensure that you aren't going to have any pain, I can absolutely give you tons of great resources and stretches and accounts to follow and all of the things. So that is where you would start. So dilators are a really good one. There's also a couple different vibrators specifically for pain during penetration. So Kiwi, Kiwi by the Pelvic People. I'm also looking to see if they will come on my podcast as well to talk about their products. I am getting a discount code specifically for them, I believe next week. So depending on when you're listening to this, I should have that next week. So that way you can purchase it with a discount code. But that one was made by clinicians that deal with pelvic pain, and the small vibration, like the rumbly light vibration that it has, can really help in not only relaxing the muscles and getting them to have a little bit of movement to them, but also to promote blood flow to the area, which is ultimately going to be what helps the most. So they have a device. They also have something called O-Nuts, which is OHNUT, and these are basically like bumpers, like little blockers that you can slide onto a penis to make it so it doesn't have full penetration with any sort of like thrusting. It kind of, again, it's like a bumper, like it stops it from going all the way in, and it's nice and soft against the body. So for people that really have a difficult time and are working on loosening those muscles, these are some tools that the Pelvic People have. There is also another product called the Petite Pelvic Wand that's really good, and that one has like measurements on it, where not only does it vibrate and it's really small, because that's what you're looking for, is you want something really small. You want it to have good taper to it. It isn't too bulky at the top, that it has a good like slant. to slide in. That one has a little measurement of an inch and then a couple inches so that you can try and get it to that line and then start doing your exercises with the dilators in and movement with the dilators. And ultimately, it is difficult. There's no way around this, for women that have pain and that have difficulty, there's no sugarcoating the fact that that sucks, that you have to do all of this work to avoid that. That's not fair. And for women that really, really struggle, that have gotten married and, they go like 2-3 years without penetrative sex, I work with a lot of those, it's heartbreaking. And I wish there was something that I could say to make that better. And there really isn't. It really is so sad, and I'm so sorry that is how things are for your body. And it does stink that you have to do these exercises in order to have pain-free sex. And you do have to use dilators, and you have to keep up on that. And I'm so empathetic to that, because this is who I see in my office a lot of times. And I work so much with women that have sexual difficulties that my heart just goes out to you, because it isn't fair. And I wish there was, something that's just this cure-all for it. There are things that can absolutely not only lessen it, but eliminate it. But a lot of times for women that have really bad tightening, and it's just that nervous system, it does take a lot of work. It takes exercises, it takes consistency, it typically takes seeing a sex therapist as well, because we need a way for our nervous system to calm down and to regulate and to switch over to that parasympathetic nervous system, where we can actually just slow down and not view things as fearful, because these sexual scripts that we have been written, and you can rewrite them at any time, but a lot of times you need help to rewrite them. You need someone else who can help you know what to write, how to write it. You can do it, and there is so much hope. I have seen women who have had pain for 20 years who have never experienced orgasm. I have seen them go from that to no pain and experiencing pleasure for the first time in their lives. It is absolutely possible. This is a very hope-filled space, but there is acknowledgement that needs to be had for the heartbreak that can be felt when your body doesn't do this naturally, when it doesn't just relax how you want it to, when it doesn't match what your mind is thinking, that your mind's turned on and you have so much desire, you're filled with it, and then your body isn't going along with that because of the way that it wasn't even your fault, that it was trained to be this way and trained to close up. And there needs to be some acknowledgement of that, and that's where a sex therapist really comes in to help you process those emotions and get past that grief and a lot of times the anger that can come from that, and get you to a place of not only acceptance, but again, filled with hope that there are things that you can do to change right now to make things better. And it's not just you alone that has to do this. This can be a partnered effort. And there are absolutely things that your partner can do to also help, because not only are we going to be focusing on the physical stretches and dilators, getting the right type of lube can make a huge difference. Silicone lube is going to make a massive difference versus a water-based or even an oil-based. Like, those are going to be completely different. And I have videos about different lubes and the properties of them, so go check those out on Patreon. Those videos are free and accessible to everyone, so you can go on and it is no cost to you to watch those. So other things are going to be learning about responsive desire versus spontaneous desire. And this is a lot of the lessons that I teach about. I have one of my paid for education content is in my full learning library, The Science of the Female Orgasm. So we go through all different parts of our body and how they connect to pleasure and what we can do with this information, and then also about arousal, about desire, the one on spontaneous desire versus responsive desire. That one is coming out in the next few weeks. But again, if you do purchase my full learning library, then every video that comes out monthly, there's lots that are coming out. You get access to those for an entire year. So everything new that I upload, all yours. Because it just takes me too long to do it on like a Q&A episode like this. Like this is an hour to 2 hours worth of content to help you understand what responsive desire is, how we can work with that, how we can help with the blood flow into the genitals, which is absolutely going to help with pain. It's going to help eliminate it. It's going to also help our body to get excited in the way that we are wanting, and it's going to help it relax. It's going to help everything to be functioning the way that we want, rather than training our body for spontaneous desire, which it may not really have. Men have more spontaneous desire because, one, they have more testosterone, and two, because it's a lot quicker to fill up a penis with blood than it is to fill up an entire vulva with blood and an entire clitoris. That takes a lot longer, 10 to 15 seconds versus 22 to 30 minutes. Okay, there's a big discrepancy in time there. So if we're trying to be men and we're trying to just, oh, well, I should just automatically be turned on, well, that's not how you were made. But the great news is you were actually made with far more capacity for pleasure than your spouse. So women's bodies were literally designed to have pleasure. So that's also why we do not want to be normalizing pain at all, because biologically we have way more capacity for pleasure than men. That is just a fact. That is biologically true. The clitoris, its only function is pleasure. The penis has 4 different functions, which usually when I say that, people are like, wait, what? Urination, penetration, ejaculation, and then pleasure as well. It's just one of the bonuses. Whereas clitoris, that's all pleasure, baby. That's 18 different structures, all for one thing. And there's no refractory period, okay? We don't have some moment of being flaccid and then needing to recharge. That's not a thing for women, and we can work with that. And also, that's something that I work with women on, not just getting one orgasm, but to be able to orgasm multiple times, some techniques for that. Because I know, shocking, this has been studied. This has been studied for a very long time. They have a lot of data. The Kinsey Institute, I really like their stuff. They have interviewed thousands of women, taken a lot of data, created a lot of resources, and so I use a lot from them, but also quite a few other sources as well, to talk through techniques and make sure that it's not pornographic in any way, but we're just explaining like how things work and how to do things. So I have videos, again, on my full learning library that show that as well. But as far as first time, so stretches, dilators, correct lube, different types of lube, and the best thing that is going to work is going to be embracing your own sexuality, making sure that you are genuinely excited to have sex and that there isn't a anxiety that is causing fear in any way. I mean, it's normal to be like anxious. I mean, it's first time doing something, but we don't want it to be anxiety to the point of avoidance or fear. If we're crossing into that threshold, then there are some things that we can do to help get into a place of peace and excitement, and that is also what I work with women on. A lot of engaged women. We have lots of homework assignments. We work together each week preparing for the engagement. We first focus on understanding our sexuality, how our bodies work on just a basic level, the capacity that we have, and then embracing your sexuality, growing in body confidence, because that's going to be huge for not having pain. If you're sucking in while you're trying to have sex, that's going to hurt, okay? It's going to cause some problems, and that happens. I see that. I have, in my episode with Carmen, she talks about a client with sex or corporal therapy where they realized what was going on and why she was having so many troubles was that she was actually sucking in because she had body image issues, and that affects a lot of women. It also affects their ability to fully relax, to fully relax those muscles and push them in and out that we need. There's a lot of body consciousness going on, so I can help with that. That really helps with the honeymoon movement. Okay, I think I answered that question. I think we did it. Okay, wait, actually, I'm going to say one more thing about this, because looking back through, I did have someone ask specifically about vaginismus after birth, because that can happen where if you have it, you get to a place where it's really good, or if you are able to get pregnant even with vaginismus, and then you don't have a lot of penetration during pregnancy, and then you give birth, and now you are still struggling again, or you're kind of back at the start if you did get to a place where you weren't having pain anymore. And again, this is where it's going to be really hard for me to say, but you do have to go back to the start and be doing those stretches, dilators, everything. There are some lubes with CBD that can help, but I do caution just jumping to what I call a Band-Aid fix, where it's something like a numbing cream or a CBD or something like that. That's not actually addressing the problem, because that's not going to be helping the muscles. That's going to be affecting more of the nerves, and we don't want to be relying fully on that, because that is just a Band-Aid fix. At the end of the day, it's not going to fully solve the issue. You do need to see a pelvic floor therapist and typically a sex therapist in order to really get to a place where it is satisfying again. But one thing I failed to mention, and we're gonna talk about it now. When it comes to any sort of sexual pain or just anything dealing with sex, one of the number one things that will help you to avoid having pain is having an expansive definition of what sex and pleasure means to you. It means to you as a person, as an individual, and to you as a couple. And these are the types of conversations that you need to be having prior to marriage. I have an entire list of questions and ways to have these discussions for engaged couples. And again, that's coming out soon, where I'm going to have an entire package for just engaged couples. But, until then, it's just private appointments. I have all of that available. But if your definition of sex is purely coitus, which is penis in vagina, that is the official term of what that type of sex is it's coitus. And then, you have phalangio, and you have cunnilingus, which that's going to be names for oral on him or oral on her. There's also other types of sex as well. Those are going to be your main ones that most people are familiar with, either oral sex or penetrative sex. But if your definition of sex is purely penetrative, you are setting yourself up for a not so great sex life, especially as a woman, because only 18% of women orgasm and experience that type of pleasure from penetration. 18%. It is the most reliable for men, which I actually did get a question about if it's not pleasurable for men, so I'm going to talk to that next, so please hold, whoever asked that question. But for most men, for like 98% of men, penetration is the most pleasurable for them and the most reliable for them to achieve an orgasm. Now, your goal in sex should not be orgasm. It should be pleasure. If you have any sort of goal, it should be pleasure. To have a pleasurable experience, to be able to let go and really embrace the pleasure that comes from touches, from the kisses, from all the different types of sex that you will have. But if you only define it as coitus, as penis and vagina, penetrative sex, again, you're going to set yourself up for failure because statistically speaking, you're probably not super likely to really have the most pleasurable experience with that, because when you understand how your body was actually made, well, your vagina is a birthing canal. It's also a place for ejaculation. Your clitoris, however, the organ that is made for pleasure, is up a little bit higher up. And also the bulbs of the clitoris, that pumps in on the vaginal canal, and you can feel that from the inside, but you need enough blood flow there, which takes 22 to 30 minutes on average in order to get an erection in those bulbs. So if you are only defining it as penetrative, or like your entire intimate interaction with each other goes a certain way where it's like we make out, we take off our clothes, we have penetration. Yeah, that's gonna be, we're not just talking like, oh, that's vanilla sex. No, that's, not really very inclusive of both people. And that's not very collaborative, because that is great for maybe his body. Maybe that's exactly what he wants. And I've done this analogy in, I think, a couple episodes ago, where I talk about going to J-Dogs versus Costa Vida and like other options. Okay, that's like going to eat at the same place that has like one thing on the menu and you don't even like that item. Instead, we're going to learn how to connect in all of these different ways, different types of touch, different types of technique, different types of speaking to each other, like ways to interact and ways to slow things down, how to speed things up. All of that is going to make it a more pleasurable experience. And yes, it does also increase your odds of having an orgasm if that is something that you are looking towards and you're wanting. But if orgasm is your goal, a lot of times then there can be a lot of performance anxiety and a lot of pressure that you're putting on the entire experience that takes away from the pleasure itself. So if anything is going to be your goal, it's going to be pleasure. And women have entirely different ways in which they experience pleasure than men. But the great part is when you start having female-centered sex around female arousal, female pleasure, it becomes so much more pleasurable for men, because we're not just doing the like quick thing for them. Instead, we're making it an experience for both people. It's kind of like the difference between if you go to a state fair and you just like get on a ride, you know, it's a couple seconds, it's great, whatever, versus VIP Disneyland. I know this is going to really hit with my Utah audience, okay? I know that y'all have been to Disneyland. I'm sure some of you have been to Disney World, and some of you have had the privilege to go around with one of those like VIP Disney members where they control all your stuff for you, and then they help you get on all the rides, and they do all your fast passes and all the whatevers. Your, I guess, Genie Pass now. Okay, whatever. I am with the times. You know, I see them walking around and I'm like, oh my gosh, what would that be like? What would that be like to experience Disney on that level where it's not just Disneyland, it is the peak of what Disney can be, where they're doing everything for you, and then it's also amazing and you're going to all the rides that you want to go on, and it's just like the best experience. That's what we want. That's what we want. And then it's great for everybody, right? So if we're going to Disneyland, we want the VIP experience. In this analogy, if we're going to have a good sex life, the VIP experience is going to be focusing on her pleasure, because that's going to actually end up being incredible for both people. And that is what I do, is I help people understand how our bodies work and the different techniques and how to make it this Disneyland experience where it's like, heck yeah, I want to go. Heck yeah, I want to interact with you in that way. This is the best. It's joyful all the time. It's the happiest place on earth. I'm the happiest when I'm with my spouse, because even if we're not having, penetrative sex, it's just a great time. I'm going to really finish this off here. I lived in China once upon a time. And I had a pass to Shanghai Disney. I lived 15 minutes away from the park. And my job at the time, it came with a free pass. So in the afternoons, just in between classes and things, I would go to Disneyland for a few hours just to hit it up, And the fact that I was able to go over 30 times and never do it all, because it's a different experience. Sometimes I would go just to pin trade, and I would have the time of my life. And other times I was going for the rides. Other times I would go and I would see, oh, these rides have, some short lines, so I'll just ride those two, and then I'm going to go to the Cheesecake Factory and get me some American food. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go to the shows this time. And it was magical every single time. Even though sometimes I did the same things and other times I switched it up, but there was so much variety to what Disneyland can offer. And as someone who went religiously, multiple times a week, really made up for a lot of lost childhood memories, because my parents took me to national parks, not Disneyland. Shout out to my parents, love them. But the culture was lost on me as a child, looking at the sequoia trees. I would have rather been seeing Mickey, but whatever. In my adulthood, I went so much, and I had the time of my life. And that's what I want you all to feel when discussing your sex life, that there is just endless options, that every time you walk in to the space with your spouse, that there is the potential to just have a intimate interaction. That doesn't necessarily mean that it has to lead to a physically intimate moment, but just intimacy, eroticism, that it can exist as this energy between the two of you, and that it can feel magical all the time, even if you're just going for a couple hours, you're doing a couple things, it's a couple minutes, whatever it may be. Sometimes I would spend entire days at Disneyland, other times I would just go for literally 2 hours in the afternoon. So that's what we want to be viewing our sex lives as. Just, it could be a couple minutes here and there, just purposeful interactions and increased intimacy. That is going to be what eliminates pain, is when you're looking forward to it and your entire body is ready to go. That's not just when you're going to be able to, feel the magic that intimacy can have, but you're going to live it. Okay, I think that's enough on that. Let's address this next one that is kind of in the opposite, where we're talking about their spouse and not being able to feel pleasure through penetration. Okay, with this particular one, I feel like I need a little bit more context. Some questions that I would want to ask if I were doing, a private appointment. This would be in my paperwork. I send some paperwork ahead of time that people fill out so I can get some background, some understanding, so that way my lessons can be really curated. But some questions that I would specifically ask on this paperwork, if someone's saying that their spouse doesn't feel pleasure during penetration, I'd be asking one, like on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the pleasure level there? And is it due to lack of stimulation? Like if there is maybe too much lubrication going on, because that's completely normal. Some women, they do not need any help with any lube. Their bodies do a great job of providing that themselves. So sometimes it can make it slightly more difficult to feel like fully if there's just a lot of lubrication going on, which that's not a problem. There's some different techniques that we can absolutely employ with positioning to make it a little bit better. Just to like squeeze those lower pelvic floor muscles a bit tighter. You could also potentially have, if you have a vagina that's been stretched a lot, you've given birth to quite a few kids, maybe it's just not as tight. Again, that's not a problem necessarily. There are some stretches and strengthening that you can do with the assistance of a pelvic floor therapist to strengthen those muscles, because what we want is we want to be able to really squeeze those lower pelvic floor muscles and then fully have them relax, and we can use those techniques of, a simple Kegel, but it can be a little bit more complex, to create pleasure, not only for ourselves, but also for our partner as well, to kind of be squeezing and pulling up and in, while at the same time they're slowly pulling out, and it creates this, those Chinese finger traps where you put a finger in both sides, and then when you pull, it creates that tightness. That is a sensation that we can create with our muscles and with certain positions. So I would say I'd be curious to know what the pleasure level is. If it really is, nothing, then I would start questioning and say, okay, well, what is the stimulation level with just hand stimulation? Where is that on a scale of 1 to 10? If that is also low, then this could actually be something entirely different. This could be a nerve thing on his end. But if, a hand stimulation or any other type of stimulation is like 100%, it's a 10 out of 10, and then vaginal is like a 5 out of 10, well, there are some things we could try for sure, but you don't necessarily have to have it be, the end all be all activity. It could kind of be a similar thing where it's like, maybe it's just not the favorite activity for both of you, maybe certain positions are a little bit easier. There's some techniques that we can do. There's also techniques that he can do as well with his pelvic floor muscles. And there's also stimulation that we could work on at the same time as penetration. Instead of just having it be penis and vagina, there's involvement from a vibrator, for instance. You could put a vibrator on his penis, on the base or the root, right where the testicles are. You could also have him wear either a C-ring, something vibrating, or if he doesn't like the tightness of that, you could also look at scrotum huggers as well, having some vibration on the testicles, on the perineum. There's some that you could also have something that he wears on his penis. There's different devices where it's pretty flush with the skin, but it has like ridges on it, and then he can wear that. So when he is going in and out and thrusting, he is feeling the texture right up against the shaft. So there's ones that turn inside out, so either he can have it where it's smooth on his side and then it's like prickly and stuff on yours, so you feel it on the inside, or it can be flipped the other direction, and then that can also be helpful again if there is a lot of natural lubrication. So that can help because it's going to create this barrier, and he'll have these soft little, it depends on the product. Some of them are like nubby. Other ones have this more wavy-like texture. Some of them have more of a, it's hard to describe these without showing you, like a, not a spiky, because it's not hurtful at all, more of like a crinkly type of texture, if that's a helpful visual. There's all sorts of different like spirals or ring patterns and textures, and lots of different types of products, different tightness on the penis. There's some that make it so, let's say you are more stretched out, it'll add a little bit more girth to him, so that way when you don't have to squeeze your muscles as much in order to be squeezing him, because then you'll actually be squeezing the device, which will squeeze him. So there's lots of different products available to help if this is something that you are really wanting to be super pleasurable and you want more stimulation. Absolutely, I can help you with that. But if not, this could just be a great reason for you to explore a bunch of other things that he may like. I did have another question that asked, do you discuss how to give pleasure to male partners ever? I've seen content focused only on female. I absolutely do. I do that in my private appointments and then also in my full learning library. That's where you'll find that type of content because it is a bit more explicit. Of course, I never use any sort of shocking explicit imagery. If you look at my Instagram, I show what I use as my demo for a penis. It's just a very simple It's not even a dildo. It looks like a vibrator, but it's plain black, smooth. It has an average girth of a penis and an average length. And then I have my flower vulva that's 3D printed silicone that I designed. And then I also have a demo for a vagina that as well, that it's clear and it's not very affronting at all. So I use those to show techniques. But I absolutely do go over techniques for blowjobs, for hand stimulation, and just the male body in general, erotic zones, different types of touch, and other ways that we can not just physically be turning our partners on and helping them experience pleasure, but emotionally and verbally as well. Ways that we can talk to each other and more fun things that you can do. There's just such a variety, and absolutely that is what my private appointments are all about, is helping you understand what your options are and what's available, and seeing what you're interested in, and then how to communicate those things, and then nitty gritty, here's the technique. That's what I'm here for. So I think that answers both of those. Let's take one more in our final 10 minutes here. Okay, let's read this next one, and they did give me permission to read this verbatim. So I have, my husband and I have been married about 4 months. I've never been able to have an orgasm. Both of us are active in the church, and we've never really watched porn. I also take an antidepressant that I worry is causing me to feel less. I enjoy being intimate, but I have never been able to experience an orgasm, and he does every time. It makes it frustrating for me. Neither of us is interested in oral sex. What can we do? Really great. These are my key clients. This is who I see all the time, is this exact story. So welcome. Exactly what you just said is what I help people with. So I've talked a bit about on this episode the sex that's on offer, and expanding our definition beyond penetration. That's a really good first step to lessening that frustration that you feel, because absolutely you're going to feel frustration if, again, to my analogy, if every single time you're going out to eat, it's your husband's favorite restaurant, and there's one item on the menu and you don't like that item, but he loves it. Yeah, it's frustrating because you always leave not satisfied. And it's like, well, that's really unfair. And now actually I'm resentful because you just get to have a great time and you get to be full. And what about me? So focusing on female arousal and pleasurable activities for you, that is something that I can absolutely help with, because when I start talking about stuff like that, then women usually go, well, I don't even know what is the options? I need some options laid out for me. I don't even know. And especially with this one where it says that neither is interested in oral, for a lot of people, yeah, they associate only penetration or oral, like those are your options, and they don't know of anything else. In the same way that some people go to Disneyland and they're like, okay, well, you either ride the rides and you eat the food, but they completely miss out on the shows and the pin trading and the secret things and all of the other. I am your VIP guest. I'm your host. Okay, I am the VIP Disney person going around with the cute little outfit, and I'm taking control of your fast passes or genie passes, whatever. And I'm helping you know where to eat, and I'm putting in the order for you. And so that is what I am in this Disney World analogy. I am that person for you. This is what I do. So I would recommend coming to me for a session, because I would need a little bit more to go off of to be able to suggest to you what to really try. But let me read this again. You also take an antidepressant. Okay, that one, I would be interested to know which one, and my guess is that you're talking about it being an SSRI. I go much more into depth on SSRIs in my presentation on female sexual difficulties and the impact that it potentially can have on sexual interest and arousal. But for anyone that doesn't know, SSRIs, they're typically antidepressants, and their job is to increase serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that helps you regulate your mood, anxiety, emotional stability, all that good stuff. So it's this chemical that is helping you to, quote, like calm down, and it helps quiet your nervous system so it's not overreactive, which again, going back to, we want to be working with our nervous system and like both sides of it. We want it to be excited and to like have that gas pedal, but we don't want it to be overly triggered where it's being triggered out of fear. We still want it to be able to relax. We also don't want the parasympathetic part that's in charge of like the brakes to be way too sensitive as well. Like, we want a nice in between. We want to be working with both sides. Whereas this SSRI, what it's typically doing is it's pushing more on the brake, and it's making it more difficult for the gas to go. That doesn't mean that it's impossible by any means. To say that it has no impact would also be a lie. I mean, it does have an impact, and it depends on your dosage, it depends on which medicine you're on. If it feels like it is absolutely killing your sex drive and you cannot get your foot off that brake, like there is no excitement, no matter how much technique and desire that we work on outside of the bedroom to help get ready for inside the bedroom, then in those cases, it might be worth talking to whoever it is that prescribes your medication, your mental health doctor or psychiatrist or whoever it is, about getting switched to either a lower dosage or something that isn't going to impact your sexual arousal as much. But with the normal doses that I tend to see with my clients, because it's quite common for someone to be on an SSRI, there are a lot of things that we can do to, again, increase the sex that is on offer and the desirability of it. And yes, it can take your body a little bit extra time to really get into what you're doing. And then that's going to be where we focus a lot on this responsive desire of, we need things for the body to respond to, because it's not really going to do it on its own. In a lot of ways, SSRIs can really kill spontaneous desire, and that's okay, because some people just don't really have spontaneous desire without the SSRIs. But to have that expectation that, yeah, you're just gonna like be aroused and like be hot and ready to go, just like nice and primed, that expectation needs to be altered a bit if you are on an SSRI, because that's not going to be quite how it works, because you're actively taking something that's going to help prevent that from happening. But that's okay, because there are a lot of things that we can do to help with responsive desire, and also just some basic techniques as well, for pleasure in the genitals, that can help the nervous system. Because the positive thing to know about our bodies is, yes, you do have your connection through the nervous system, absolutely you do, but you also have nerves that go directly into your brainstem. Okay, they don't pass through your spinal cord. They are able to go straight to your brain. There's also nerves that are the pudendal nerve system and the vagus nerve, that are for your genitals. And when stimulating those in a really proper way, like with good technique, then we can help the arousal and the desire, of mentally, to be matching and in concordance with each other. So it's nice to know that there's kind of two sides to it. So if one side is not functioning really well, the nervous system side, if we're taking something that's actively suppressing that, well, then we're just going to really maximize the other parts, the parts that don't go through the nervous system. We're going to really focus on the muscles, the blood flow, the nerves, and then our mental desire as well. There's absolutely things that we can do to help. It's not like all hope is lost if you're on an SSRI, and that like the cost of being on something that helps you with your depression is that you lose your sexual arousal. Like, no, it does not have to be that way. I work with a lot of people that are on SSRIs, and depression itself tends to lower sexual interest. So sometimes, in some cases, SSRIs can actually help you improve your sex life because it can help lower your anxiety and improve your energy. So it depends on how it affects your body. And again, I go over this in my female sexual arousal, or not that, sorry, my female sexual difficulties and dysfunction on my full learning library. If you want to learn more, we go much more into depth on this. And then the science of the female orgasm, I think, would help you a lot because we're going to talk about the nerve endings, and you can either do that on your own. I do private sessions, and I would work with you to figure out how we can help your body to respond well and to feel pleasure and to make it a desirable experience for you. So I hope that answers your questions. I'm just going to check, make sure. Yeah, I think that's good. We are at the hour. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you all so much for interacting with my Instagram. The last 48 hours have honestly been crazy in the best possible way. I've cried like over 4 times, just out of gratitude, that everything that I have dreamed of is happening and it's coming true. And people are finding me on Instagram and they're booking private appointments with me, and they're reaching out and wanting me to come speak to their Relief Society groups and their bunco groups, and they're wanting me to come to their ward and talk to their, the youth in their ward about the law of chastity. And this is what I have been working towards for so many years now. And I sacrificed so much to get my master's. On my other podcast, I go through that entire journey, My Life According to Nikki one. The amount of faith that I had to have in order to pursue this master's degree in sexology it was crazy. I mean, I sold everything that I owned. So much was given up in order to pursue this, but I knew that it was the right thing to do. And I also knew that my sacrifice was going to be consecrated and that God was going to make use of it, and that I was ultimately doing what I was being told, and I was following the promptings, and I was really following the Spirit. And I didn't know how it was going to work out. And even in Australia, I had 5 jobs to pay for my grad school. I was constantly working. I have never been that tired in my life. And I was constantly studying, and I knew what I was working towards, and it was very difficult. It was a really hard time. It was one of the hardest times of my life, actually. But I would go on walks at night to clear my head and to just get out of my building, and I'd be going on walks at 10 p.m. Before bed, and I would cry, and I would dance, and I would listen to gospel music and inspiring songs, and I just felt so deeply in my soul that I was in the right place, doing what I was supposed to be doing, and that it was okay that it was hard. And I would visualize what my life would look like with this degree, and what it would look like when I came home to Utah, and what I would want to do, and the things that I would want to set up. And I told God my dreams, and now here we are, and I've been posting for 14 days consistently. I've only been home a few weeks, and I have seen God's blessings in this entire experience. I mean, I've gained over 3,000 new followers. I'm dumbfounded and so grateful that I'm able to fully share this with everyone, and I get to do this full time, and I get to do what I feel called to do, and that people are being receptive of that, and it's bringing me to those that have been seeking help, and I feel like I've just been placed in their path and they've been placed in mine, and it's been so beautiful. There is nothing quite like being in the front row seat of your own life, of watching what God does with it, because they are so amazing. And again, we always say this, that their plan is always so much greater than anything I could have come up with. And I mean, I came up with some pretty great plans, I'm not gonna lie to you, but the way that this has just been going the past few weeks, and even just in the last 48 hours, one of my Instagram reels really blew up, and I've seen the impact of just one reel going viral and being able to get in connection with people that want what I have, and that are seeking more education, and I have it to give, and it's a privilege, and I'm so grateful for all of you, and for your submitted questions, and for trusting me and listening to me. Thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope that any sexual experience you have feels like you're going to Disneyland. And if you need a little help, if you want that VIP experience, just fill out a form. The link's in my bio. All right, that's it from me. Have a great week.